Welcome back, you guys. How you all doing today? In today's News Daily video, I'm going to break down the three major stories doing the rounds today. Here are the latest updates surrounding Christian Pulisic and a potential move away from us come the end of the season. I'm then going to move on to discussing an alternative to Pulisic in a certain Mr. Kingsley Coman from Bayern Munich. And of course, you guys, the news does not end there. Today, some interesting report came out surrounding Jorginho, Sarri, and a potential reunion back at Napoli. So today, you guys, we have a ton of stories to break down, discuss, and digest ourselves into. I hope you enjoy. Smash that like button, and remember to comment, get involved, and leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Now, let's kick things off by discussing these latest Jorginho reports. Now, naturally, whenever there's any news stories surrounding Jorginho and an exit from this club, you know that his agent in Joaa Santos definitely has a part to play in stories like this. So right now, I'm going to read through the exact quotes that came up from Joaa Santos, and here's exactly what he had to say. Sarri's return to Napoli with Jorginho is a good idea. The player has a 2.5-year contract with Chelsea, and it's an important contract. Football is possible, of course. We have to see what De Laurentiis thinks. Naples is a city that Jorginho loves very much, which has marked an important part of his career. Sarri was an important coach for him, with whom he expressed himself at very high levels. Now, I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions immediately. We've heard this same story now, with different variations of this for a while now, and I think it points to this possible reality that maybe Jorginho is really considering his future away from this club. Now, what could be the reason behind Jorginho doing this? Well, I think number one, Sarri playing a part in this makes a lot of sense. Now, with Napoli right now, it seems like Gennaro Gattuso, he will be leaving at the end of the season. And at this point in time, De Laurentiis and Sarri's relationship has mended ever since Sarri left Napoli originally all those seasons back to sign for us. So, based on what Joaa Santos is saying, Sarri returning back to Napoli could play a massive part, could make a massive involvement in Jorginho, potentially considering a move away from us to go back to Serie A. Now, there could be many reasons for this. From a family point of view, Jorginho has a young family. He might consider for himself that for the betterment of his family, he prefers to raise them back in Italy. From a footballing perspective, I also think that due to the constant critique that we've heard of Jorginho and that lack of physicality, it's been something we've heard from Sarri himself. It's something we've heard from Lampard and recently too with Thomas Tuchel. I think if you're Jorginho, you're thinking about preserving your career. You're thinking about the long term. And of course, considering the fact that we are going to be in the market to sign more midfield players that are more suited towards those physical demands that Jorginho just can't really provide, I guess from that long-term perspective, Jorginho may be considering a future back to Serie A. And of course, if Sarri returns to Napoli, that could play a massive involvement in persuading Jorginho to take that step immediately, because of course, Jorginho's football was essentially created by Maurizio Sarri. Going back to a city he knows very well, a city he loves, playing under a manager that got the best out of him from a footballing perspective, it does make a ton of sense. Now yes, we do know that Jorginho has currently 2.5 years left on his current deal. Potentially, with a return back, we could receive a sizable amount of money. We know the Euros is happening this summer. Jorginho is most likely to represent Italy in the tournament as well. And normally when players play for their nations, you're able to sell them on a premium. So from a footballing perspective, potentially Jorginho could leave, and it seems very likely that this decision would come down entirely towards Jorginho and what his agent planned. Now yes, we do have money, but if you can afford to sell players on and reinvest their values back into the team, I feel like this could be a win-win for all parties. Of course, Jorginho playing under Tuchel right now in a short possession style game is getting the best out of him. However, to get the best out of Jorginho, you have to use him in very niche ways and play him in very specific manners. So if we could sign a midfield player more catered towards a variety of different styles of football, I think in the long term, that is giving us the possibility to future-proof our midfield, which could be the best thing to do. So in the comments below, would you be disappointed to see Jorginho leave if of course he decides he wants to go? Or do you feel like Jorginho has to remain here because he plays a crucial part of this team? Let us know below, you guys. Now, we take things towards the second story today, and that's further updates surrounding Christian Pulisic and his potential future away from the club. Now, recently, over the past 24 hours, Fabrizio Romano reported on the Here We Go podcast that right now, Pulisic is not looking to cause any stress or any aggravation. At the end of the season, though, he will consider his future at the club, and what he's relying on is more game time. If that game time doesn't materialise, potentially Pulisic will decide that he wants to go, and for a guy that's 22 years old that needs to fulfill his potential, you need that consistent first-team football behind you to get to those levels. Now, I mentioned this in yesterday's video, but I'm going to further expand on the recent quotes that came up from Thomas Tuchel in regards to how he sees Christian Pulisic. Now, as Tuchel was mentioning, he feels like he's been a bit unfair with Pulisic, and he was further expanding on the fact that maybe due to his previous relationship with him, with how he used Pulisic back at Dortmund, considering that he was using a more impact style role, Tuchel admitted basically that maybe that same bias is clouding his judgment so far this season. Now, you know, from one perspective, that could sound a bit mad, that the manager has already immediately decided this is the only way I'm going to use Christian. But at the same time, there's also some footballing reasons behind this. And I think to understand those reasons, we need to understand Tuchel and his actual philosophy on football. Now, with Thomas Tuchel, with his tactics, his setup, he sets his teams up, he materializes his tactics entirely to find the weaknesses and exploit them against the opposition. It's about minimizing their best threats while exploiting their weaknesses. So, considering that that is his philosophy, that's his principles, it's no surprise that he's going to find a way to use his squads efficiently to obviously get the best out of his way of football. Now, with how he tends to play football, you guys, we are a short possession style team. And reality is, consider it from this point, if we're taking the lead in a game, let's say it's 1-0, let's say it's 2-0 with 30, 20 minutes left. It means that the opposition team, around that time, they're more willing to leave their position. They're more willing to find opportunities to get themselves back into the game. And the moment these teams do this, it means that there becomes more space to play on the counter-attack. So in that sense, it's no surprise why Tuchel would see Pulisic as that perfect option to use when the game has evolved to those moments. With modern day football, the tactical battle changes like every 15 minutes. So I think managers see the game exclusively from that perspective. So for Tuchel, he's thinking, okay, for half an hour, I've got a fully fit Pulisic who's able to, affect the game dynamically and, bring new qualities and threats when the game has evolved tactically from that point on. Of course, I get it from Tuchel's perspective, but when you're a young player, 22 years old, you want that consistent game time to be able to improve and become the best player you can. Is that something you can accept? Especially when the manager has been so vocal, so public about how he wants to use you. It's no surprise why Pulisic could have some reservations in regards to his long-term future here, based on what Tuchel publicly said. For me though, I do feel like maybe Pulisic's main competition is more with Timo Werner. I think Werner, Pulisic for me are quite similar in the sense that they're the goal-scoring inside forwards. And of course, now that we have Werner who's getting more priority in the team, I feel like Pulisic's found it harder to get himself back into the team. That's up to you guys to debate whether that's fair. We know that Werner has been struggling on goal, and we do know that Pulisic with his 1v1 ability does bring some new threats and dimensions to the game. Still though, a part of me feels like, of course, it's very exciting to sign young, exciting talents to fill your squad with, but the reality is, players this young, they want that consistent game time. That's the only way they can improve. I think if you're 27, 28, 29, it's easier for you to accept a more rotational role compared to being a young player. And when most of our attacking positions are filled up by players under the age of under 23, it does make it difficult. And sometimes I feel like when you have unnecessary competition all the time, yeah, competition's good, but there has to be levels to it. You can't just have, a bunch of under 23-year-olds competing to get into the team. I feel like you can potentially miss out some of their potential in the long term if you don't just keep that faith in them. And I say this on the basis that, okay, if we had that long-term belief in Pulisic, why was Timo Werner then signed when they kind of play a similar role in this team? I mean, I definitely feel like this is a conversation to have and it's a debate worth mentioning. But Right now, there's plenty of time to see what happens before the season does end. Who knows what's going to happen. But right now, you guys, comment below. Would you be upset if Pulisic was to leave? Would you understand his reasonings behind leaving? Or would you feel like the club are making a stupid mistake and letting a player of his talents and potential leave? Let us know below. And now we end things with the final story today, and that's in regards to these updates surrounding Kingsley Coman and the potential move to us. Now, this came from the Daily Mail, and this story was further supported by German journalist Florian Plettenberg, and in it states that essentially if Pulisic leaves, the club would turn towards long-term alternative Kingsley Coman. I feel like this report is definitely interesting. I've got my opinions on this. Essentially, the report states that we've had a long-term admiration for the player who's been on our scouting list for many seasons right now. He currently has 2 years left on his current deal, and if Pulisic goes, then the club would turn towards him. Now, I'll give my thoughts and opinions right now, and essentially I'm feeling this, okay? If Pulisic leaves because right now there's not enough space for another attacking player in this current setup, replacing Pulisic for a like positional replacement in Coman, does that make much sense? You know, when already some of our attacking players can't all play in the same system, in the same lineup, how is that going to help things by signing an additional winger to replace your existing one who is struggling to get game time because there's no spaces in the team? I don't know about this one. I feel like it would be a bit mad considering that, okay, we've got Werner and Hudson-Odoi who play down the left-hand side. With Coman, with him, he is able to play down the left, down the right, to a very high level on both sides. So if he was to come, Coman for me is a world-class winger. I love how he plays the game at pace, and he has the quality every single time to match with the end product. I think if you're a striker, he is your dream because you can consistently rely upon that service to come from Kingsley Coman. You know, he can beat his man out wide, he can cut inside too. He has a bit of a goal threat as we saw in the Champions League run they had last season. And of course, as I'm stressing, he is an assist machine for strikers. So potentially, let's say you've got your Haaland up front. You know, I feel with strikers like this, you have to exclusively play towards him. Then Coman could be that option to use. I don't know though. I feel like it'll be very interesting for sure. I still feel like how much space is there to play attacking players unless Tuchel really is going to strongly use this back four system that I was speaking about in the previous video a few weeks back. I mean, from another point of view, when Tuchel managed Dortmund and managed Paris Saint-Germain, he did have wide players to rely upon. Maybe he might feel that Pulisic might not be his guy. Maybe he could be looking towards Hakim Ziyech, who, you know, again, this is a guy that can play out wide, and he hasn't been doing that. So I feel like we already have those options available in the team right now. I'm not too sure about this story, to be honest. I think it would be absolute overkill to let Pulisic go to get a like-for-like replacement, but that's my opinions. In the comments below, leave yours. If Pulisic was to leave, would you invest in another winger to replace him? Or would you reinvest that money into an entirely different position for the team? Let us know below, you guys. But on that note, I'm going to wrap things up, keep things moving. I'm Nini FC, this is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos.